Hello. Welcome to Tactical Crouch, the guided meditation episode. Join us as we enter Roster Mania and we enter Nirvana. Now, on our podcast today, we will be taking very deep and subtle breaths, not like Atlanta Reign and how they will be bottom of the Overwatch League.
Fuck off.
Namaste in your lane as we venture in to the great unknown.
Okay.
All right.
I would feel more zen if you didn't do this bit in the very fucking week where your microphone broke and like we are literally listening to your fat speeds going up as you manipulate
as I
gong.
Try to pull up the stuff I need to pull up ahead of time. Yes, hello. I'm on a new microphone because my mic broke, and I'm pretty sure it was the reason why my computer was crashing. But maybe it wasn't. Who knows? Hope everybody had a good holiday. Yiska, how was your holiday?
Oh, yeah. We celebrate Christmas on the 24th, a little bit of, German trivia. Right. And then the 25th is now forever reserved for my nephew's birthday. So we went over there. Little dude turned around. Was fun, for sure.
Nice.
Just walking around and shit. First words, all the fun stuff.
Cute. Ominous Silhouette. Very good. Thank you for contributing to the podcast. Appreciate you. Who is that? I don't know. Leave in a comment who you think it is. Maybe we'll change it mid-podcast. Who knows? Yiska has multiple assets that I created for him. So you're just going to have to keep guessing on who that is, just like how everybody just is convinced that Dallas is doing things that they may or may not. Who knows? That's all I'm saying.
Look, don't feel too honey-dicked here. I'll juice it up a little. I'll give you I'm off this week, and like the subtle, the reports that I would be following maybe. Now I'm just like giving a couple of ideas where some teams are going. That's my goal this episode, that you got a couple of ideas what's going on with the teams, especially in NA.
So I'll translate that for all the both the podcast viewers and listeners. What Yiska's gonna do is gonna drop like very highbrow, like punny hints that you're going to have to unpack like 3 different layers of like connectivity to like point to like the shoes of a player that like could possibly be joining your team.
I mean, what Joe is saying is like, if you haven't read Weimar Classicism in order to get the metaphors that you're about to be submitted to,
this is your fault in his mind. Yeah, this is your fault. He blames you. Consumerism, late stage capitalism, yada yada yada. But speaking of late stage capitalism and the people that create this podcast and how they support us, is that capitalism? I don't know. I didn't pass history. Anyways, 276 is brought to you by our beautiful patrons: Avril, Vista Baby, Battle Crab, Refine Bean, Bronzebot, Boohow, Picasso, Chris R34444, Kasha67, Lotion, Porchop, Sammy, Rexe, and Stuck in Bronze, and our YouTube members: I Sam Jello, William Jess, Fishman, Fire Element 6, AK Chris R, Brother, Stuck in Bronze, Samuel Esparza, Adam L, and Sagi Fumi. All right, we got some moves. Finally, we didn't get a delay. Our Christmas wish came true.
Yes.
The free window, or the free agent window rather, is and has been opened.
By the way, can I already say, like, what terrible timing. Like, I know a lot of the folks like working this expected it to be delayed, and then as rumors came up that finalizing the things that are going to happen next season and how they're interconnected and like how it's very likely that this window is actually going to come true, they're like, I guess I'm going to have to cancel my Christmas for this. And then like I'm honestly, and I mean no ill will here, but if the league schedules this, and it's important that this is scheduled in order to get the visas and everything going, then they better be approving these signings, pending league approval. You know the tweet. They better be doing that under the Christmas tree. Because if you are imposing that onto, everyone with signing duties in this league, then you better be up there checking these and thoroughly checking.
To be fair, Like, when have they ever? Like, yes, there have been like examples of them like not approving, but like it's very occasional, right? It's in a blue moon, correct?
Yes, that's true. But whenever it fails and they don't do their due diligence, it always looks a little bad, right?
For sure. Yeah, that's more than reasonable. But there is a lot of news and rosters to get into, and I think it's probably best we start with some of the not most high profile, but we did just have a show match, right? We did just have the San Francisco Shock facing off against the Dallas Fuel in the E-set. Run it back, double back, up, down, left, right, double back show match series. It was held offline, which is very cool. Love to see more offline competition, and obviously drawing in sponsorships. That's a good sign as well. Which again, I think that's like an understated thing that I think slipped under the radar. That, you know, obviously, yes, Shock announced their initial signings. Is that fair to say initial? Let's start there. Is this the initial Shock roster, or do you think
it has to be right? Like they're currently only 5. They need 6 by March, unless they have Krusty signed as a player, which we know isn't impossible in the Overwatch League apparently anymore.
True, it's true.
I mean, it's pretty likely that they're going to not do that cynically, given the stature of this roster and organization. But I will say I very much echo what you said. I think this is basically roster announcement done right? It's not done incredibly good, but it's as good as you can reasonably expect.
Oh, you don't think so? Oh, I thought this was like way more interesting than like, look at our cool Blender animation. No. Wow, it's Max, and he's saying, whoa.
It depends. I think, like, okay, this might be controversial, and that's definitely my taste, but like the ones that I have in mind is like, for instance, Reckless to G2, right?
Sure.
That type of production, and like, I want to win worlds, and I will. That shit is just POG to me, okay?
Yeah.
I will it. Like there. I'm pogging. I'm quietly going pog, and this is like where I want these to go more towards too. And I think it's hard to say. Like, I'll also 100% tell you, I knew Vin Dame. He sang. Everyone knew. Max. Everyone knew.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
I mean, yeah, that's like the worst.
Like this could have been leaked, as in like an official report. It's good that it didn't. In that particular instance, I think where this went a little bit off is that Dallas wasn't ready, apparently, to say, okay, we're announcing this, and we are also using this activation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But everything else is always the thing that I advocated for in terms of roster announcements. Roster announcements are some of the most engaging content, and also you see it by the views. If I switch to this view, we're currently having 860K engagements on this, and at least 150,000 have seen the sponsors logo, right? By and that's just the Twitter account, right? We're not talking about the YouTube. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it. So this is not great engagement. It's pretty good for the Overwatch League, though, right?
Yeah.
So that brings sponsorship attention. You have a pretty good idea what kind of audience this is. This is what high effective CPM looks like. And considering like this wasn't 100% leaked, even though, let's be honest, he sent it Max pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's kind of like where I was taking that, where it's just like, oh, like, would it have mattered if Max and Heesang got leaked? That's like the worst, not the worst kept secret, but like the most obvious promotion you could have ever seen in your entire life. Like, who cares? Like, no shit, Sherlock, they're going there. Like,
yeah, maybe who are maybe you that one's kidding? Big. Yeah, I think like
this is an exception, but I agree with you mostly.
Yeah. I think that there are, especially for Western media, there are only so few things that could have happened. So, for instance, like, let's say Super to Glads, which is a thing that could have happened in the past, right? That being an announcement, and then that blowing that up, and that not getting out, that is like that's
not popping the way that it should,
right? Agreed. Can get some eyes on it, and that's where you can drag the engagement out of the content, right? And That could be interesting. But yeah, I think like that's definitely easily beats the, bad image on Twitter. We signed X, Y, and Z. And also realistically, the only thing you are going to drag yourself out on. And I also don't know. It is weird to me because it feels like this is the very obvious sponsorship avenue, right? So if you have a team sponsor, you want them to be engaged and you want to present this type of stage to your potential team sponsors in order to attract sponsors, right? So for instance, sometimes you will take sponsors that won't even give you money just for the name recognition that they want to be associated with your content. Famously, Coca-Cola does this, right? Yeah. So why not still put some production into your announcement, given like that is an announcement that generates at least a little bit of traffic. For instance, like even something like sugar-free to Titans could have been that, in my mind, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
If you read the room and like say here's a proof of concept, right? Maybe the league is too far gone for that, but then again, like I don't know, that type of like just like laying back and letting it die is too cynical for me. You got to try some stuff. I don't think it's that cost prohibitive either to have something cool.
I mean, even like Houston is like trying, but they're like leaning into like the cringy like early 2000s like unregistered hypercam to like Giroud Sandstorm. Like at least it's an attempt. It's not the same old like just post an image of like X player. It's like we've signed them. Everybody clap now, please clap. Yeah. We could use the clapping.
The thing is, like, as far as I remember, even the Reckless G2 thing was like 4 days of production. They signed him. 4 days later, they had everything. Like, they flew over with like 2 production people. They shot all the footage. They went back. They made sure they had the deal with BMW. They had the BMW there for him to be filmed in front of. Like, everything, or the entire business that could be made there was done in 4 days. Right. Admittedly, with one of the best content teams in esports history, which is G2.
Sure.
But like theoretically speaking, you can get closer to that. You can promote some product there, right? I think totally. it probably is worth doing more than just that, right? And Eric's is saying Sugar Free was also 890k Twitter views. I think that just means you underestimated what kind of traction you could be getting. Right here, like, it is just a highly anticipated story that has been going on since 2018. By the way, I recently saw the legendary Iostux tweet where he like commissioned 2 models to talk about the 39-year-old prodigy coming in. But like, I think that is probably bare minimum. Not the show match. That's of course like going above and beyond. And then I'm happy that they got a sponsorship activation there. But like doing something else, right? Like it would have been very easy to have like if they indeed already have the sponsorship activations that Titans had with the breadsticks and whatever in place. Like this is where you can basically make the case again. Almost 1 million clicks on that is interesting, right? So. Yeah, I think that's definitely if you wanna drag this card out of the mud, that's the first thing you got to do. So super happy that the Shock once again proving that they are probably the best holistic franchise in terms of like the success, the professionalism behind it, the way they market, the way they understand the community. The way they've built talent funnels with their, with their O2 partnership and whatnot. They just understand the entire ecosystem and use that knowledge to their advantage. And if everyone was like this, we would have far less issues in this league, right?
100%. Like, I think that's so incredibly well said. The cynic in me wonders, not to completely get real meta with this, but I think it's probably worth exploring. The cynical part of me wonders why we don't. Why are teams just so cashed out? I think there are some teams that are just really disillusioned with the product. I get that. But then I look at, some teams that are even, remotely neighboring the Shock. And I'm just like, where are your talent funnels? Where is your big production? Like, we've seen some, but like, it seems like they're just always ahead of the curve.
And that's the dark side of this argument that I just made, and almost the counter argument that ironically played against the Shock in this match. Which is, of course, the Dallas Fuel. That's a team that won the league.
Right.
2 years in a row, built something special there. Built something that didn't look like it should work sometimes. We remember the no-hit scan thing that still got them very far last year. They bought into Edison. That worked out, right? Like, still keeping like Hanbin and Fearless, which in the end made them actually win the season. Like, everything of that sort of invested into the into the success of this team. And then they also, like, this might be where I have to declare bias, because as a reporter and as someone that wants to get post-match and whatever interviews and just like a statement and whatnot, Dallas is amazing. If you ask them for a post-match interview, they will only say no in cases where there's a probable, like, just something like we're traveling. I'm sorry, we don't have the devices.
Right, there's just logistics issues.
Otherwise, you will always get them, which is not, then they not common. And then keep in mind, this is a full Korean roster, right? That means Dia always has to be there, the assistant general manager of this team, in order to support these players and translate, which she also does marvelously. So then, of course, they had the regional support of journalism in Dallas itself. They had homestands where they tried a lot with the regional rivalries. They had they just tried a lot in the past, right? Like, people remember, like, for instance, the Jane thing where they gave him like a content studio.
They built out a whole content studio. I think Avast was there. Like, they were planning on making like a big content push. It didn't pan out, but like you're saying, at least they tried. Yes. They're trying something.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we're sitting here at the start of season 6, and this is a team that has decided that their strategy apparently isn't as sustainable, right? Like, and that's unfortunately the case if you look at everyone else but Shock. And there, I would say, it's also probably a pretty high demand for everyone to realize, okay, let's be as good at the Shock. They're actually more the outlier. It actually takes genuine high skill that you can't expect everyone to replicate in terms of like all levels of the organization. But I think like that, and maybe that's hyperbolizing, but the Fuel, of course, had to have some radical moves. I don't think there's an argument to be made that they let go of this backline to the Atlanta Reign for competitive reasons. It's very obviously not the case, right?
No, of course not.
It's not the case that like Fearless is being let go for competitive reasons, right? So they already had a lot to sacrifice, and they were willing to make a lot of concessions within their new paradigm, right? And then the new economic pressures that every team in the league faces. And they do face these pressures, but then you still have like the shining light that is this show match. That's like, okay, yes, there is economic pressures, but if it makes sense for sponsors, they will be there. Right.
Like ESET is kind of new. I mean, I've seen them. I feel like they've orbited like the esports space. It makes sense as like an activation. It makes sense as a sponsorship to like gamers, where it's like, I use ESET, like it's quite good. But if it makes sense, they'll come. And I think that's like the life jacket here that I really want like listeners and viewers to like reach out and kind of grab hold of. It's like, yeah, the league might not be able to get too many sponsors, but it's very clear that like certain teams still have like the reach and the capability to sell something to someone and get some return. And I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think that's true, but it's still like it's still pretty like everyone.
It's a candle. It's a candle in the dark. I agree.
What hurts me, or what sucks, because currently nothing more can really be disclosed in terms of like what the situation is and what kind of solutions the Fuel are working on. But like to say they don't care and whatnot is like very obviously not the case. They're not fumbling anything. Like this is just like how this goes. And you will also see a trend in the teams that are currently still investing. And I'd argue that of the teams that are still investing big bucks, and genuinely big bucks, their ownership groups are probably either too far removed or all in on this.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not smart spending. Real talk, it's not smart. It's just it's just not. Right.
I mean, Eric, I don't know if this is something that you have the bandwidth to do at the moment, but if you could pull up the rough numbers of like the small Fuel docu-series that they put out prior to them winning the frickin' league, like that's content that I've been clamoring for ages, and it finally gets published and somebody finally pulls the trigger on it, and it's like very good. Like this is like genuine behind the scenes, like, you know, I don't think most people remember like Crybaby Tasmo, but like there's some genuinely touching moments where like he talks about how like if Hulk didn't set all these things in motion, then maybe they don't get here. And it's like it's a really nice piece. Like 15K views, like altogether. It's just like, you're not going to come to me and tell me that the Fuel aren't trying because they weren't ready for the show match that maybe it wasn't even for them, when they've done all of this laundry list of extra things that, you know, they've done in the past. It's just like, yeah, no, you're not going to, and you're right. If this is the results of these things, they have to keep trying in different areas until they do find what's cost effective when it comes to like smart spending, right?
Yeah. Go to videos, please, because it's in the series and it's like chronologically. Go down.
But the gist of it is like it's just
Fuel.
not.
Yeah, 5 years of Fuel. How much is that? How many views? I can't. 3K.
5K.
6K. Yeah, I mean that's not
under 20
right?
for all three. No, it's simply not. But like the artistry is there. Like the idea is correct, but for whatever reason, whether it's the reach isn't there or you know what have you, it's just not hitting as it should, and that's the big problem. Is that you know this team is trying. There are teams that do try. Some, you know, I think are a little phoned in. I think there's still a lot of like content that's, you know, produced that is just like very archaic when it comes to like, oh, you guys remember TSM Legends? We're going to have the players talk for a couple seconds and then put in a bunch of fluff clips of the games that they played. And that's the content. It's just like, yeah, everybody does that. Like, it's nothing new. Yeah. It really doesn't seem to work much anymore. Like, let's try something different.
Yeah, I think the big one is, and that's also probably hard for something like a millennial to come to terms with, at least a millennial esports fan, is like, you don't win this esports thing anymore based on merit, as in performance. You win a lot based on vibes and like connecting with people, right? And that's the and of course, like having someone like Super in your organization, that's going to be easier in order to accrue a fan base that then goes onto your social channels. And now it's not like you can just like bolster that one network and like it will feed you traffic. You have to build a holistic system of YouTube, of Shorts, of TikTok, of Twitter, that like some Reddit presence. Like back in the day, like it was enough to get your article up on Reddit because the click-through rate was so high, right?
Yep.
Now it's just like a different game. You just gotta be holistically engaged, and it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of skill. And at the same time, you're competing against virtual crack of entertainment of whatever else is out there, right? So, it has become very challenging for esports, and the entire ecosystem has to be under the light of like a popping thing that people can buy into the holistic story of everything. And we got to get in there. Honestly, yes, there's still questions for me in terms of game longevity. I noticed I play a lot less in Season 2 than I did in Season 1 of Overwatch 2. That's a problem that you need to be addressed. I think the content pipeline is probably not broad enough. But like at some point, you also got to realize it's no longer like an issue of the game. It's also an issue of the esports content that is being produced that makes us fall behind other industry-leading esports. And even they have to, of course, like look at economic realities of ad spend and whatnot. At the same time, at least their attention is not going anywhere else, right? And we like this once again needs to, get the old confidence back. The problem is, I feel like for a lot, I agree that owners probably feel a certain amount of like, okay, we tried a lot and it just didn't work, and now it's like the league's turn in order to create some buzz, like, and there's still probably a commonality thing, but it is really challenging in this situation to justify overt spending. At the same time, everyone who doesn't also dooms everyone else in some sense, right?
Oh yes, 100%. Like somebody has to kind of fall on the sword, and kind of kick the door open for everybody else, because when you do have a show match like this that does kind of catch a sponsor, I think that that starts the snowball, right? Like if one sponsor gets in, then other sponsors are like, oh, well, at least they're investing money, so maybe we want to invest money too. Like they seem like they're smart. They're smart money here. Okay, like maybe we'll be a little bit more interested. It's probably easier to get sponsors when you've had sponsors in the past, right?
Yeah. And
at least that's my logic.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like we're like something I could, for instance, buy into is if the skin situation remained as scarce, like there was this scarcity in Overwatch 2 skins, and we were still one of the sources that provides free skins just through watching. I think historically, esports history, that has absolutely revived esports before. Maybe this is. Yeah, but long story short,
is it this? Yeah,
we're in a situation this offseason where like spending took a nosedive.
Sure. Notably so, like, and reasonably so. Makes sense.
Honestly, like a lot of players now are fine with just being in, right?
Yeah.
And preferably being in NA because of the predicted competition there and who's going to be there and who's going to be their teammates. And at the same time, I notice, and that's, I guess, is good news, is, the hard lines of like, we're going to cynically min. We're going to only sign people on deferred contracts, and we're only going to start paying them at the last possible minute, and only 6, and no housing and no food. That's not a thing that is actually happening to my knowledge in NA at the moment.
Interesting. Okay.
Not super cynically, of course.
Not super cynical. Okay.
Of course, just like a couple of a couple of those things will happen, but like nobody has absolutely minimized everything, right? Like some of them are still playing housing, some of them are still playing food, but then they might have deferred payments, but at the same time, like they pay for visas and whatnot. All of that. There's different stuff going on. Also because you as a general manager or whatever, like head of competitive director, the king of the world.
Yeah, president of esports gaming, whatever. Yeah,
can now feasibly argue that just a minor amount of more can get you pretty solid results and can realistically give a good shot.
And if there was ever a season to like, can we get like 10 more K and then we can get like this S-class player? Like, okay, yes. I guess.
Yes. I mean, okay, let me think about like okay, here's where we juice. Okay?
Oh, juice alert. Woo woo. Big one.
I think no team, if the team that I've been told is the thing that they're honing in on, like narrowing down on, if that's the team of the Washington Justice, that's a very good team by comparison. Like, we're at a point in NA where you have to say, okay, NOXL, I just caveat them because, like, I don't know what's going on there realistically. There's a lot of rumors what's happening there. Just consider them pound for pound bottom of the table, and that's probably reasonable. But other than that, you would have to say, pound for pound, I think currently Titans is the second worst roster in NA. And that's crazy to say, right? If you look at that roster. Who else? London is also down there.
Agreed. Yeah. Like, pound for pound. And I think we say this every year, but when you compare to some of the moves that I also, see where you're going with this. Like, yeah, it's tough to like put them higher.
I think
unless you're reaching at, like they're lower. I don't necessarily agree, but we can get into that a little bit more in depth. But I do want to stay with the shock in the field for just a moment, and dive into these some of the notable names that are on this shock signing, and maybe some that just weirdly aren't. So unless you've been living under a rock, the announcement: San Francisco signed Finn proper, Heesang, Max, and Vindame. Solid roster overall. Violet's name weirdly missing. Did they feel like they needed to announce it? Is there something there? The Reddit sleuths are active. Tis the season. So is this a naughty or nice signing, Yiska?
I mean, okay, so this roster is of course mega cracked. I think this is probably the strongest pound for pound roster.
Probably, yeah.
They definitely the sixth, which is pretty important that they get someone solid. Probably, I would feel much better if it was Junbin.
Okay, sure.
And then maybe even one more. But yeah, like not having Violet, this is a terrible season for franchise players, my guys.
Yeah.
Like nobody is really able, like the Carpe, Dante, like Profit.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it before. It's just like franchise players, you want to keep paying them, but at a certain point, it's just not worth it. It just doesn't make much sense, especially if you're shifting directions, right?
Yeah, I think
like their values.
Realistically, the last one remaining, if you don't want to say franchise player proper right now, it's probably Kevster, right? Yeah,
weirdly so. I think people kind of forget. I know I did. I think we had this discussion in voice chat. Shout out to our community. There is a link in the description, I'm pretty sure. So if you want to come and hang out and listen to us play Hunt Showdown or God knows what game we're playing every other week, please do that. It's fun. It's a good time. We'd like to have you. But yeah, I think we did kind of like have that same discussion recently where it was just like, yeah, maybe it is Kevster, because you look and it's just like, oh yeah, it's like since like 2019, 2020-ish, roughly. It's just like, yeah, he's been there for a hot minute. He's been there for a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I think that Kevster's the one guy. Everyone else, Leaf is gone. Like all of this is just, of course, an economic reality. All of those guys were on pretty huge contracts. I'm sure it's not easy to tell them, here, we still want you, but at 50%.
We need to cut you.
Like, there's of course, right? And there's a market correction here. So it's to be expected. But yeah, Violet is certainly one of those guys. Of course, like a legend for the shock. And the back and forth is a little weird. I'm not sure what it might mean, right? There's a lot of situations. Like, if Violet was signed, there's no reason for them to not disclose that here. There's a situation where he might still be in contract negotiations and is not happy with the terms, and they're playing like chicken with him, or like he's playing chicken with them. There's this world where he's talking to other top tier teams because he's still like his profile as a supporter is super attractive, of course, like being able to play main support and flex support. You probably don't need 3 guys in that case. Then, like, you could also reasonably think he's retiring after like such a very like high accolade career. Very close to winning 3. So there's a ton of stuff that could realistically happen with Violet here, and I don't really. I actually legitimately do not know.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, hope he can hang around at a proper compensation on whatever he's doing. But yeah, it is. If he was to depart, that would be an end of an era. At the same time, it's pretty crazy to think that a full like team of, once again, like contenders players that were contenders players not too long ago, all of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Will be the best or the highest pound for pound roster coming into the season. Where that said, when I think it's not as big of a gap to the second best team as we might think. I think there's probably a little bit of overhype in terms of Hisang and Max.
Okay.
Involved in there, but yeah.
But it's difficult to argue otherwise. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, it's difficult to argue. Like, okay, well, like Hisang is pretty good. Proper's like we know what he can do. Yeah. Like Max and Vindayam,
Yeah, it's just
solid players.
We have to be careful not to fall into the mimetic interpretation here, like a rookie from O2 Blast that is a DPS player coming into the Shock. Oh my god, it's proper, right? Like, no, there's one proper. Hisang isn't proper. He's not within the same S plus tier of player that proper is. He will always be second fiddle to proper. And this is not. He might win Rookie of the Year. He's not going to win MVP on this team if proper is on this team, right? So, it's still, of course, like a fucking nuts roster. But at the same time, I think Atlanta is reasonably close. I think Boston is reasonably close. Like there's Houston potentially is reasonably close. We have to see what Glads
we'll
is
certainly
cooking.
Get to
There's maybe
Glads
an
is still
APEC
out there.
roster that could be close. We don't know what APEC is doing realistically.
True.
So, but yeah, everything else, and then even some underdogs are still there. Where I'm thinking, okay, you guys can also absolutely just breach into the top 5. Like I'm thinking of Mayhem. Once again, like if London actually can, pick up on their team culture stuff, that is interesting. Even though I would have to say, pound for pound, they're one of the less impressive rosters in North America. I think there's just a lot possible next year, and once again, of course, a lot will come down to meta. But yeah, like
that's a given, though.
Yeah, in terms of like the Shock, probably as good at roster building as you can reasonably. Like you get Violet in there, and then you get Junbin, and then maybe another DPS. That would be like they're not going to do that, but that would be perfect, right? That would be perfect roster building, and however far you're removed from that is within the percentage errors, but other teams are more removed from that.
I mean, totally. I think this is the changes that they've made thus far already like kind of address my criticisms of them in the past, where it's like I'm a huge proponent of like single language rosters. I know Krusty's been on that crack pipe, trying to get in the project players, trying to do the multilingual, keep all the possibilities open. I hear you. I get it. I see like the ideal situation. I see the flexibility that gives you, but ultimately, like the way that you unlock like the true potential of these crazy players is you like remove as many hurdles as you can.
Yeah,
and I think one of the big ones is communication. This already pure Korean roster, great, love it, awesome. The other big criticism I had of the Shock, especially last year, I know that this is a little bit, this is going to seem like a hot take to those who are a little bit recency bought, but throughout most of the season, Shock did not have a consistent second man at DPS. They just didn't. It was a rotation of like Sam, and then it was Striker, and Kilo looked okay until he couldn't get a kill in some of the stage finals, and that's like not... Sorry, for a team that's like shooting for a third title, it's not what you want, right? Not good. I think Hee-Sang fills those shoes just fine. Consistent second player. Is he going to be proper junior? No. Will he be good? Yes. I've heard this name kicking around for God knows how long, since he's like 12. I don't think that, we talk about players like that without them being like somewhat special and somewhat good at the game. So I trust and believe that thus far, this is a solid roster. Solid A on the naughty or nice list. Gotta give it a nice. And anything extra, to your point, if they do get an extra tank, if they do get an extra support, they fill out the roster a little bit, I think that's only extra credit. Like, I think they could walk into the league with this. Granted, it's only 5 players, but even then, I think they could walk in and do fine. I think they probably still are, I think you could still consider them a top 5 team thus far. Is that crazy to say?
Yeah, probably top 3 pretty safely.
Yeah. Hard to really argue otherwise. But yeah, that's pretty much... I mean, it's hard to go into power ranking season, but like, we kind of have to just put them first, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Like,
considering like the only reasonably, you should never just auto lock the winner of last season as like the highest seed pick, even though
you can't do it anymore.
You can't do it for the Dallas field, considering half the team is gone, right? So
right.
Considering that, like, and to be fair, half the team is also gone for for a Shock, but they also seem to be filling up with more high quality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you still like just. It depends on what others are doing. I think Boston interestingly framed it as in like the sent an email in the newsletter that those are their initial signings, or there was a particular wording which made it sound like they weren't done, right?
Yeah.
So like there's theoretically still room for improvement for them, and that's kind of nuts to think about. But for now, as it stands, given we don't know what Glatz is doing, we don't know the full Outlaws plan, we don't know, what other signings the Mayhem might have in store, we don't know any, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. I think for now, Shock should be your number 1 pick. So they're definitely a nice couple of pickups, even though highly predictable.
I mean, yes, highly predictable, and I think that lends into some, extracurricular, stuff that will help them, right? I think that as we, cut through the fog of the off season, I think we are going to see some teams that look real sexy. I mean, you've already pointed to Atlanta. I get it. I see it. But when you have a team that's worked with each other for God knows how many years in the amateur league, they're coming up together, some are a little bit older, they get promoted and they just kind of coalesce together. It's like, okay, when everybody's sick, what else can you judge?
It's sort of not true though, right? Like for instance, Proper and Hee-Sang have never played with each other.
No, individual connections to one another, not necessarily true, but there is like a core that has necessarily played with each other.
that same idea just won the season, right? In Dallas Fuel.
100%. So you did get to Boston. So give me your initial take on Boston. Let me, is it explosive? Is it not? You let me know. Tell me.
Okay. So I think I knew 3 signings and I was already like, that was piquing my interest. I think I knew Decay. That was pretty straightforward in terms of the connection to Pre, of course. I had heard of Striker, and then I had heard that Birdring was making a comeback, and that there was a certain stronger connection to Boston. I did not see this backline coming, and I definitely did not see Smurf coming. I didn't think that team had that type of pull. It's a bit of magic here that once again Priest has worked. That, by the way, has already, like, you got to look at those rosters. You got to look what a GM does. That he always had cracked rosters, which is why we all thought they were outperforming. I think this is very clearly a top 5 budget team, probably going into next year. We'll see how they operate. Interestingly, and this was, someone let me know. Okay, how do I frame this? There's an assistant general manager in the picture that isn't Supreme, that is pretty active on Reddit, who said that this was not a Kraft decision to spend this big. It's Oxygen's decision to invest that amount of money. Interestingly candid to say this. Probably someone higher up at Oxygen, so fair enough. Thank you for still continuing to spend in the Overwatch League. And yes, the more I look at this roster, the more I see the theoretical blow-up potential. There's also a little bit of a seasoned veteran question mark in me. Yeah. Because rookies have been so good last year. At the same time, I think the backline, their demise, I remain that Lee Jae-gon is a bit of a trap. I remain that Izayaki, for me, was never like this Omega S-tier player that he might have looked like. I think that's also a year where he might get exposed. But once again, all it takes for this backline to be fixed is to get someone, dude, go Violet here instantly. Everything that could happen is solved, right?
Sure, agreed. I mean, okay, to address a couple of those things, I agree with Lee Jae-gon. I think he's another one of those like very vibrant players that like you need to be very careful with. If you add too much to like your painting of like your team building, like it skews the whole thing. It feels like really weighted one direction and it just throws everything out of whack. Like he's just so aggressive and you want to like position him in playmaking scenarios, and maybe sometimes he just feels like he needs to be in playmaking scenarios, and sometimes that doesn't necessarily pay off, right? It does throw the team out of whack a little bit. Another player I think that fits very similar, another player that kind of fits a similar build, at least in my mind, is Yaki. I think he's another player that just like needs to be the center of attention, needs to be the hero playmaker, wants to be the hero playmaker. And if you don't put him in that position, he's going to do it anyways, right? Yeah. Like it's just like they're very, very good, but like you need to be very, tender with how and what you do with them. So trap, yes, but there's still something there. Is Yaki? I think it's hard to argue that like 2021 wasn't like an actually like S-tier year for him. Obviously this year, not so much. But I think that feels more systemic to what Shanghai was going through, where it's like, yeah, bro, like Fleta doesn't look like he like has his monitor on half the time. And this team, like from this coaching staff is like, yeah, we have not adapted to Overwatch 2 well. I think that's like safe to say for some of these veteran players that like they just are not adapting to like the new playstyle very well. Maybe that's a Fleta thing. Maybe there's more to that. Maybe it's a backline thing. Maybe Lee Jae-gon and Izayaki aren't necessarily able to be those playmakers that we know them to be from 2021 because Overwatch 2 doesn't necessarily allow, supports to do that. I don't even know if that's necessarily true. I'm just kind of like throwing out theories as to why maybe we feel this way and why maybe Shanghai in this year, granted, it's not this year in X amount of days, but in 2022, they weren't necessarily as, poppy as they used to be. Another thing that I have kicking around that, well, I'm not going to completely derail this. Let's stick with Boston for a second. I agree. Can be a little explosive, could be a little, swing and a miss, or actually crack it out of the park. Like it feels very punchy, right? Like it feels like if this actually works, they could be a top 5 team, 100%. right? It's hard to not, I feel like we also talked about how recently on the show about how Berggren could genuinely like this would fit his meta. Like there's a lot of like traits of Overwatch 2 that seem to kind of fit what we know of him in the past, where it's like great hit scan in a world where you do want that like dedicated hit scan player. And if we're going real far back, you want to talk about one of the best like pre-Overwatch League tracers of all time. Berggren is in that discussion. Everybody wants to like give kudos to like, oh, Striker and SBB. It's like y'all don't know about Berggren.
Yeah,
he still could have that cooking around. It's possible, right? Sure. I don't think he plays it over Striker, but just saying there's a possibility that still exists in the toolkit.
That's a little like, not gonna lie, the hyperflex question mark that a lot of people see here, I don't see.
Mm-hmm. In who?
In the Boston Uprising, in terms of like their DPS line. I don't
think... Oh no, there's a very clear one.
I think like there's not going to be a problem of projectile in this team.
No. I think people are just like I don't think people realize how flexible Decay can be. Yeah. I think they just only remember him on like the specific picks, and it's like no. I think Decay can just play like whatever he wants at like a pretty high level. Is it like world class all the time? That remains to be seen. But like the litany of heroes that he's played throughout his career and like the numbers that he's putting up, as much as like we want to like poo-poo statistics and like, sure, and poke holes, I don't think you do that for as long and not have something cooking sure under the hood. You know what I mean? Like there's something
is still like a super talented player that unfortunately made a lot of tough choices in terms of like which teams he went with. I think this is like this team legit. Like I think even people are a little bit pigeonholing Striker. Like every one of these DPS players has a mean Genji on this team. I think what kind of heroes are we even talking about when we say projectile heroes at this point? We have definitely enough traces on this. Yes. Echo. Someone's going to pick up Echo here. Like
I think Decay is a 5. It will likely be. Do I know that for a fact? No, hard to say. I don't think we've ever seen him play too much Echo. I'm not going to pull up stats on it because everybody will mold at my mic. But I would trust that Decay's Echo is probably all right. It's probably at least serviceable.
Yeah. So
gotta be fine.
I don't see the problems that other people are seeing this. In terms of the hero pool, the vibe check I get in terms of like if this team has to go through a rough patch, there's some question marks in me. Similarly to how I had them with Atlanta last year, and if they don't find the immediate success, then I think they could have a performance like Atlanta hit last year, which was not terrible, but not inspiring.
Not up to the level that you'd expect.
Yes. So that's probably like what's happening here. It's interesting, like with the amount of just like incredible head coaches that were theoretically on the market this year. It is interesting to me who actually now sits in head coach positions, right?
Yeah.
Like we have like Gator, we have like Dongsu, we have like theoretically Neko, even though we will talk about like what that actually means in a second for the Outlaws. But there's a lot of people out here when realistically Rush was available if you wanted to pay. Moon sounds like would have been accessible. Like keep in mind, these guys are esports professionals. They need their next gig, and the only other thing that they could realistically do is switch games, right? Like so for them to not get a job here is pretty interesting. If that was the case, I'm sure eventually someone will make an offer, and then
yes.
Like, by the way, like I don't want to make it sound like Rush has gone from Fuel.
No.
Based on that, just like based on what was available in tweets. You know, like everyone is.
It seemed like everybody was a free agent, and it's weird that like it's taking this long to land. You know, somebody who just won the league.
Yes. So
and has a track record like that. Yeah, it's nuts. It's weird.
that's and then also Moon. You know, we haven't heard anything there. So yeah, but yeah, in terms of the Uprising, I think that there's some stuff there that once again there's a couple percentage points where you could upgrade. You could have had a more tenured head coach. You and you can still sign some, like brainy coaches. You could sign another support player. Arguably, you kind of want maybe someone to pick up the off tanks for Smurf. So you can, like, yes, it is the... But once again, like if we're
needed, but agreed.
If we're like big spending, as the tank hero pool also keeps growing with Ramatra and whatever hero is going to come in, that's going to happen during the Overwatch League season. Yeah, like maybe Smurf can start through this like he did last season. What if suddenly Diva is like a staple and everyone needs to play it? And now there's off-tank players that have played it for 5 years, and you've got to catch up, right? That's theoretically a possibility. So, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be holes. Once again, you cannot prepare for everything that Overwatch could theoretically throw at you. The meta is a gamble. You got to play the odds, and I'm pretty happy with the coverage that this roster has in total. But while being mildly aware of the vibe check and the veteran check.
I agree with like the veteran, like, so let me ask a clarifying question. When you're talking about like veteran check, are you saying that you're concerned about how long the players have left, or the impact that rookies had last season and how that may or may not correlate moving forward with Overwatch 2?
I mean, there's so many factors into this. So, veterans have... Okay, there's a concept. I've talked about this on the podcast a lot of the time. It's a concept called a special skill, right? So, if we take an archer and he aims at the competition range, then he will be incredibly good at hitting the arrow at that particular range. Move the target 5 meters back and front, he will considerably lose skill in hitting, like moving in like leaps and bounds towards, like, the recreational archer or the adept one. So there's a particular thing where hyper professionals build a special skill that takes a lot of time to build up, and once they got it, they have to do less in order to maintain it. They don't have to have these crazy hours. Overwatch completely keeps resetting a special skill.
Agreed.
But for a while, like let's say season 4, season 5, season 3, season 4, things entrenched a little bit. Nobody had to reinvent Tracer. Right. So that's when like the veterans shined and their value was very high. We come into Overwatch 2, fucking everything changed, right? In terms of that.
Agreed.
We look at the initial P values, especially the first half of the season. My God, were rookies dominating. We look at who was in the grand finals. Rookies are overrepresented in terms of like how many were signed and what the results were in general in the higher placements. So there's a pretty... the last data I saw was pretty like much in favor of coach veterancy and against player veterancy. Now, of course, a lot of that is hunger motivated, right? It is hunger and it is selection, okay? Veterans face less stringent environmental pressure based on the new game because they already are there and they have a visibility advantage over rookies, okay? They have a systemic advantage in terms of like visas, in terms of like culture, in terms of like everything else that takes to play in the Overwatch League. And my bias, I think the bias I perceive from general managers is that generally they want to sign known qualities that of people that have been able to perform. Like, it just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Despite the fact that you can now feasibly argue that you should sign more rookies than veterans, right? At the same time, so there's a selective pressure that rookies have to play against, and those that make it are actually nuts for that, right?
Sure.
And there is a thing of being sated, right? So,
agreed.
One line of argument that people brought up is like, oh my god, the only one that hasn't won an Overwatch League on this team is Decay.
Right.
That can both be a boon and a disadvantage. A boon, based on the veterancy that we outlined, and of course of the known quantity and proven quality of these players, can also be a disadvantage because everyone's not as hungry, is not as willing to put the immense amount of hours in order to learn this new game, in order to learn this evolving game, to keep up with fucking now 17-year-old Crygclauds that have all their chippy chips still like tuned to max of human potential, you know, like their neuroplasticity is like cranked up to 1,000,000%, just all focused on this one thing in their life to be great at Overwatch, and you're like, yeah, you know, I kind of enjoy relationships in my life, and I also like to think about what I'm doing after, and like also like, you know, whatever it is, like becomes now more attractive, and the game moves out of focus, right?
Right. Yeah.
So all of this could be the case, but then again, also these players have had a decent amount of filtering, especially Smurf is almost someone that I don't have these reservations about.
Nope.
There's a really good, I think it was the Overwatch League that made that content piece, where they had Seoul and Philly, and they had like these little cards, and they had to say stuff, and there was a moment where there was a question like, would you rather play in a fun team, or would you rather win the Overwatch League or something like that, or be really or would you rather be in a team where everyone is like on the same page, or would you rather be in a team that wins very often? And Smurf is like, I want to be on a team that wins very often. Oh, sorry. Right? I got it. The wrong question. The question was, would you rather win an MVP title, or would you rather win a season? Okay?
Yes.
Fury said, I would rather win an MVP title. Smurf said, I would rather win a season title. They all discussed it. Of course, everyone showed their cards, and like Fury's like, well, I already won a league title, so now I want to win an MVP. Smurf, with the most baller answer, is like, well, I won 2 championships. I still want more. Right? Like that just tells me like his mind is still focused on like team benefit, on winning the league, and I think this is also probably the vision that Pre was successfully able to sell here. By the way, I'm currently gleaning. That's a 2 million view tweet, by the way. Once again, you could have probably marketed this a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. I think there's more. I think there's some creativity to explore that hopefully GMs tend or want to do, but we digress.
Yeah. So yeah, I like, once again, this is on the nice list. Pre-cooked. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. There's actually not too many cooks in the innate kitchen right now. I think some cooks should have looked at the ingredients that are currently on sale and should have shot up higher. And Boston is not one of those teams. Boston took the top tier ingredients, and now they gotta cook something tasty.
I mean, I do want to circle back to like the rookie versus veteran discussion, because I do think there is, I think there is an interesting angle to look at there, but I think I'm going to put a pin in that for a future, maybe even like a side podcast, like we can really dive into it, because I think there is something to say about like low sample size and high density on like really, really solid teams, where it's like, yeah, if you just promote like the Vancouver Titans of 2019 and then just like only look at that and go, oh wow, yes, rookies are very good, like we should just chase after rookies. It's like, okay, if you split up that team, isn't necessarily work all the time hard, you know. I think there is some like some room there left to be explored. But with the Boston Uprising, I don't think it's crazy to say that this team could unironically win the Overwatch League.
Sure.
Was that crazy to say? I know it's weird to say Boston is a world title contender, but with what they've shown me thus far, and if Paris going to, use bold words like initial signings, and there are still some hot names out there, you want to like put some sloppy toppy on this roster? You want to add a Violet? You want to add? I can't even think of. Go check out Korea Contenders video. If you want some extra names that Boston could chase after, like, yeah, if this is the initial, and I agree with a lot of the coaches that I talked to last year that were like, yeah, I think the recipe for success is to have veterans and rookies so that you do get the best of both worlds where the veterans can kind of showcase to the rookies, like, hey, this is how you approach the game. And like, they can kind of lead but also the rookies can light a fire under the veterans and be like, oh, dang, like these kids are working. The whole environment's good. The office is working. I want to work too. Like I want to get, so that fights off the sated thing that you were talking about. Right. So I would love for Boston, this potential next wave for Boston to be a couple rookie signings, maybe 2 or 3.
Sure.
I think thus far, like the skeleton that they've given me already, I think can be a title contender. And it, to me, speaks, in the past I've written about like the letters of intent. I think this is already a letter of intent that like they want to win. Like this is a winning team. If you don't win, or at least like podium, right? I think podium's a better, take, especially how earlier on we are in like the free agent signing window. But like, is it crazy to like look at this roster, remove the logo, look at the roster and go, yeah, they could get bronze. They could get 3rd place. They could fight for 3rd, maybe 2nd.
But keep in mind, you got to see it in the context of what NA is going to be.
Agreed.
Like, it is just going to be such a meta gamble, depending on what happens. Like, if you're consistently like in dive metas and like you have like Decay, Genji, Striker, Tracer, like Smurf on Winston, that's like going to be nuts for you, right? Now, if we go into the, off tank and then maybe like, I don't know, some maybe hard hit scan, maybe even that is not, once again DPS is not going to be the thing that's phasing out.
It's really not.
But like, let's say you got to play Zen Ana or something like that, right?
Sure.
Now you're a little bit more in trouble. At the same time, like I think the nastiness of next season is that most or many teams will have enough qualities that by the time playoffs rolls around and they tumble their way through the season, that they will have like these island qualifications out there that could just like, make them win.
Agreed.
Here, case in point, look at the Atlanta roster. They could feasibly win every single stage for a while.
Pound for pound, yes.
Playoffs rolls around, suddenly it's ball meta, and Shock has Jonbin. Like, okay, you lose 2 games in a row, and you're out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like Glads-esque recipes that are in the Overwatch League 2023 season kitchen, where it's like, yeah, sometimes you're just not going to have that ingredient, and your stage goes kaput. You don't have a Junker Queen, and unlucky, but you still have some stage titles to bank on, right? Like, I think that's the bare minimum I'd expect from this Boston roster, right? Is like the 2022 Gladiators like roadmap where it's like this is a roster that should be competing for stage titles. Yes, sure. If you just gamble wrong and you don't have the pieces, nobody's going to hold that against you. But I think there is like a bare minimum performance that I think you should at least expect from the skeleton of the roster that could even be added to per praise verbiage.
No,
and that I think is scary.
Missing a stage title is depending on what. Keep in mind, we're using our current ruler, right? Like
Agreed.
How many teams are invited to these tournaments. That could all change.
Agreed. Yeah, true.
But like based on the season 5 ruler that is established, yes, like not making a tournament would feel like an underwhelming performance.
And I don't even know if they need to win, but like at least fight for one.
Sure,
get to a finals. You know what I mean? Like this is a team that like if they go like if they're missing a Hawaii, for example, right? If they're not making midseason, if that's even coming back, like.
So they should have like a shock performance. You're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Sure, you want to take an early dive to the losers bracket, have to fight back, whatever. It is what it is. But you should at least be like contending. Like this is a roster that should contend 100%. And if it isn't, I got some questions. I got some serious gripes to have because this is a good team.
Yeah,
this is a good team.
I wanna wait a little bit more and see what the other chefs are cooking up because
agreed. And I think per some speculative talk, I'm very not happy with some of what the chefs are cooking. And am not like super jazzed at some of the rumors. So that's where I go with Boston. I'm like, oh, okay, like this is something I could like see working. This is something I could see like really being successful. Can it blow up in my face? 100%. Did anybody expect London season 1 to win? No, but look what happens when you got good players. And this will be the biggest contradiction. Like you don't even have to rest your laurels on Atlanta to like really like fight me on my like friendship is power totem pole. Boston wins the league. I like my argument's out the window. You're telling me Striker, Decay, Bird Ring won the Overwatch League? All right, bro, sure. Yeah. Fuck it. Throw money at the superstars.
Yeah, sure.
Hard to argue at that point, right?
Sure.
Moving on. You did bring up Houston.
Right.
They have been cooking a little bit.
Ooh.
Are they naughty or nice?
Big one. Okay. The fearless thing is kind of.
Oh, stop.
Is kind of nice. Like.
Okay, it's nice. Okay. I'm not where I thought you were going.
The thing is, like, would you not agree that his hero pool is pretty limited? And that I'm more concerned for Fearless than Smurf for sure.
Oh, I mean, totally. But I don't think you make that move and just like think he's gonna float, right? Like he's a role player, much in the same way that a lot of main tanks are just role players for their team. I'd love for them to sign, if memory, just snag like a top like Korean flex tank, slap him on this team, you're good. Not Piggy, please Jesus. Stop. That like this is another team that should be in winning. This is another team that should be like fighting for a deep playoff run. Like
it depends, right? It depends.
Yes, they need to make the right moves forward. Like, and I can already see. Like, I don't want to see this team in a Tracer meta as it stands. Pelican Fearless Shoe happy. I've seen Pelican on it. I'm tired of it. It's not gonna punch up. Yeah. We've seen Happy on Somber and Tracer. I don't ever want to see that shit again. Like you need to fill it out, but there's like a lot of pieces you could fill it out with, right? There's a lot of good, solid pieces. You have Shoe, love that. There are moves that they need to make to like really solidify themselves as like heavyweight contenders, but like there's so many good players on the market that like you have to try to miss them.
It's ironic that I feel like a lot of the type of players that Houston could use are all on the Boston Uprising. Like virtually every one of those DPS would be pretty good for them.
Yep.
Here's an outside shot.
You plug in a striker, great.
You ready for
sure?
Hit me
with some speculative.
Tell me,
juice.
And that's not juice. I'm really not juice.
Yeah,
but like
speculative.
Okay, so assuming, first choice would be Prophet, right? Like that's.
I mean, yeah, that's that's nuts.
That would be nuts. What about Choice A1?
I love that. I think that's wonderful.
That boy really convinced me of his Tracer.
Dude, yeah, agreed. Yeah, when he's playing over a Peretta, the guy who's like, I'm tired of hearing about, but also like watching his film. I'm like, this Tracer fucking cooks. Yeah. He's fucking cooking with gas.
Yeah.
And then Choi Se-won comes in and looks like equal, if not a little bit better, with like a deeper hero pool. Like, somebody needs to save this kid.
Yeah, for sure.
He's Fleta incarnate. Somebody pick him up. And if you're telling me Pelican happy Choi Se-won, like, yeah, that's a contender.
Yeah.
That's a contending DPS line. Yes, you do need a flex.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. And I think you can skimp a little bit on the... Like, I feel like Choi Se-won is probably already like a lot more economical option over...
Is it?
Over profit, yeah.
Okay, sure. Like, but even then, if if it doesn't go profit Choi, I'm really worried about
who else is left. Who else is left? Let's rub our.
I mean, sure, you have some like you have a lot of like rookies like Top Dragon who are getting a lot of attention, rightfully so. That should be in that same discussion. Do you want
Top Dragon if you have Pelican?
Do you want that's where I have to like feign ignorance because I do not have a good eye test read on like what his hero pool really is. Because Pelican, for my money at the very least, is a little bit more shallow when it comes to like hero pool at like the highest level. Again, I am judging the Houston Outlaws as like title contenders. Pelican's Tracer is not title contending. Neither is Happy's. But you know what is? Happy's Sojourn, Pelican's Genji, Pelican's Echo. You know, a lot of the picks that these players are known for, there's a good reason why they're known for them, right? Like, you want them to be on their best heroes. I don't know if like Prophet or Choi or, you know, I can't speak for Top Dragon, but I think those are the type of players like these almost, I think you can carefully, or not carefully, but I think you can rightfully say that like Prophet is a hyperflex. I think Choi is like knocking on the gate to hyperflexdom. And I think he would be a great fit. Is it a little bit more economical? Sure. But like, it shouldn't be too much more because there really needs to be like a bidding war for this kid. If you're worth your salt.
The alternative is to just have Pelican like hyper focus on improving on the Tracer, which is probably going to be instrumental.
Agreed. And there is obviously I want to give players room for improvement, but I wouldn't rest my season on somebody just getting better at heroes. Like how, and I think we've had this discussion in Discord a couple of times. Like, how many times can we say like a player started at the beginning or at least part of the season and then ended the stage or season like drastically improving? Like I can name 2 off the top of my head and like that's about it.
Yeah.
You know, you have like Choi Hyobin on like Sigma when that was like first released. Homie looked like hot trash. End of the season looked like one of the best Sigmas in the world. Same with Fate. Homie couldn't find his fucking slam button on ball. End of the season, using it as like a weird tilt pick against Fearless to win them a stage. You know what I mean? Like that's the level of improvement we're talking about. Not too many more other people that, you know, I can really say that within a season to make those level of improvements. That's tough. That's tough to call. And I don't know that you need them to do that. You have so many good players out there. Literally toss a stone and you'll hit one.
Yeah.
And then you want to talk about like maybe some diamonds in the rough from Korean contenders. Again, shout outs to Paul and LaFawn. They came on to the show a couple weeks back, gave us some juice.
Sure.
Let us know if you're interested in, you know, I feel like half the shit we do in Discord is like speculating and team building. Those would be the people I would be chasing after and asking. But thus far, Pelican, Fearless, Shoe Happy, that's a great start.
Yeah, agreed.
Needs some work done, but solid overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Quite good, I would say.
Also, I guess, like, while we're still on Houston, I think, let's call a spade a spade. That team's head coach, in what we understand as head coach, is very likely to still be Jungbuck.
Yes.
Neko being called that is probably like an entitled thing.
Yes.
It's probably maybe a money thing, whatever it might be, right? But I think like we probably, like, it would very much surprise me if Jungbuck now retreated from in-game input and left it all to Neko. No. I don't think that's what's happening.
Not at all. This is kind of like what I read into it, and you tell me like how like right or wrong I am. I don't know like how close to the situation you are, but with like the stuff being said in like Outlaw Cord, with like everything that we've heard about Junk and like how like strategically minded he is there a world where, or I guess are there possible worlds where like Junk just wants to focus on like managing the team? I mean, I guess that kind of speaks against what I'm just saying. But what I'm trying to say is that like it feels like last year Junk didn't have necessarily all the power he wanted, and like now this is a position to like both keep him as head coach, but also like make him unvetoable. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
Where it feels like maybe in the past, maybe even last season, there were moves that were made that he necessarily couldn't help.
Sure.
That's what I read into that as, where it's like, yes, Neko's coming in as head coach, but let's make no bones about this. Junk is probably still the acting head coach. Neko as, you know, a member of the coaching staff, assistant coach, you know, sure. Titles are weird, but yeah, director, president of gaming, of competition, of esports, knight, first class, private, brigadier general, right?
True.
That's what we're calling him.
True. Hunting titles more than Eric in solo queue.
Eric's a title hunter. I don't even know if I have titles, to be fair, in Overwatch 2. I don't know where to look. And Jake is out for like the 8th time, so there's that.
Right.
Rest in peace. I think would be a great member to the broadcast team.
Hopefully.
I think.
Yeah.
That would be a great fit for him. So
yeah,
would like to see that. I know we talked about Houston, or not Houston, but Vancouver briefly, but I feel like I'm about to mold you. Is this a naughty team for you?
Yes.
Really? Why?
Okay, I feel inclined to say something spicy because, or not spicy. Okay. I am cognizant of the bias I have towards like Baroy making decisions.
Sure.
But if I take everything out of that, which I probably shouldn't, because like good decision makers make good decisions.
Yes and no. I think it's fair to like try to check the bias.
If I look at someone that brings a lot of their former roster that already didn't have any success, or not a lot.
Okay, yeah.
What they're saying is either the person that was in charge completely fucked it.
Bingo.
And once he was in charge, things improved, which is true. Under Eskov, they had a much better stuff. At the same time, that may all be true. It's still the case that this roster, when I look at it, has to function on a level, or has to win the dimension that London won games through last year.
Yeah.
This roster misses all the marks on pound for pound. And fires past what is possible in the current market. This is a roster that has more resources available to them than other rosters.
Agreed there.
That will be worse pound for pound than a considerable amount of rosters this year.
Does that not make it kind of obvious what that direction is? And I feel like we're just dancing around. Like, I think you kind of already said it, where it's like, yeah, if you're actively going to shoot under what everybody else is shooting for, as to like maybe, you know, trying to not have to deal with like negotiations or like bidding wars, what have you.
There's no bidding war for S-tier talent, for some of those S-tier talent. It's just like, please give me a job at minimum. Yes. Is it okay if we defer your payment? Yeah. Okay. Like, right. See you in scrims.
Okay.
I mean, you know, right?
No, I know. I know where you're going with that, and I agree. Right. I think that there is. I think you're spot on the money when you talk about London, right? Like this is a team that I think is going to be about like the atmosphere and the ecosystem rather than like just the talent. I think that's like kind of obvious to me with like the way that they've made their at least first initial signings, right? They keep Aspire, I think, is like criminally underrated. I think Punk, I'd like to see him on some main tanks personally, but I think is, again, criminally underrated. Faith, I'm not going to even try to judge main supports half the time, especially Briggs, because that requires like a fine-tooth comb. So I'm going to defer to Baroy. This kid apparently in his mind is like a top 3 main. Sure. So I'm going to just defer there, right? Like sure. It is what it is. I think Crimso's criminally underrated. Then you get to like not the oddity pick, but I think I trust what I've seen out of Sugar Free and everything that I've heard about him. I think this kid is going to be like, I don't know that they can keep him for 2 seasons. I'll say that.
Really?
I think he is going to be an absolute all-star for this team. Also unlocking Aspire, because again, like when you look at Aspire as a player, right? Came out of contenders looking fantastic. Went to a Toronto team that he literally couldn't comm with and still looked like a good player. Again, yes, went to Titans, looked solid, had his moments, but like overall kind of sunk with a sinking ship, which not great. But I still think there's something there. When Stats Lab went live, I went through some of those. I think he has like numbers that are weirdly high for a player on a team that really sucked, right? I think Sugar Free can be the kind of shining light for this team. I don't know how high I am on him, but I think that as a team, I get where a lot of the sentiment is, where it's like, yeah, they're probably like near the bottom. But when you're looking at teams like Vegas, like London, I don't know if it's necessarily fair to compare Titans as it stands right now, because they're like, I'd like to see a main tank signed. I'd like to maybe see like a 3rd DPS, but like, I don't think they're too far off of like just being like a solid, like 6th place team. 6, 7, 8.
Really?
I think they can really do some damage. Yeah.
I mean,
unironically.
They like, once again, this is the nature of this year in NA is
sure
that the quality of these teams definitely allows them, based on the meta, to punch high, right? And I think like even the hardware going into this, they are just pound for pound are better than the perception I have of them is better than the hardware London went into the season with.
Sure, of course.
So if they succeed on the London dimension, they have an incredible team culture. They can pull through. They do everything together. They also get a little bit lucky towards the start of the season. They get the better scrims eventually, and they can grind themselves up, much like London did. Then that I understand that angle that you're winning through this. At the same time, you're signing Sugar Free, a free agent that hasn't played competitive Overwatch in a hot minute.
Agreed.
While, seemingly, Choice A1 is a free agent. You could have probably, theoretically, Sparkle was a free agent. Prophet was a free agent. Alpha Yi is a free agent. You know where I'm going with this? I just gave you 4 S tier names.
Yeah.
That are currently not signed to anyone, right?
I agree. I think I'm going to be completely honest. I feel like they're just looking to stay Western. Sure. Like Faith is already like an extremity where it's just like, yeah, you've already played within like a Western mix in the first place. Like you're probably fine. Mm-hmm. And it's like, do we want to gamble on Prophet, like joining a Western mix and not necessarily being a great culture?
Look, I'm not saying that that's the destination that.
No, but I know I get where you're coming
I'm saying that's the type of guy that will be shooting at Sugar Free, right?
Yeah.
So, like,
and it is a little bit of a gamble, but I think enough people have gambled on him and found success that I'm willing to go, okay, on your rookie year, somebody who, yes, has not played competitive Overwatch, but has been reportedly tearing it up apparently on the ladder. and I've never been one for ranked games, right? I've always been very against, oh yeah, did you see Super Stream? He's practicing Genji, but that's not for me. But when you have a young talent that is consistently just like just running over lobbies and like getting rank ones, like it's nobody's business, like there is something there. Again, very similar story to Crimzo. A lot of people don't remember that, like Envision, shout outs to like Albion out here doing Mythic Plus shit and WoW, but they needed a Zen player. What they do, they contact the highest Zen player on the ladder. Turns out to be Crimzo. Now is one of the, if not the best Western flex supports in the league. And I think it still has some career longevity to him.
Right.
Sure, I guess. Like I'm saying like Western, like nationality wise, right? Like kid's nuts. The kid genuinely is quite good. And I think he was good on Dallas even way back when with like the whole Decay situation. I thought he was doing like really, really good things. Like a good, like almost like above average.
Okay. I give you NYXL. I give you Paris.
Yeah.
Give me a
Vegas,
roster.
Correction.
Right. Give me a roster that this Titans lineup beats.
I don't know. Like, you and I both know, like, we're going to lock eyes across the room with the Washington Justice. I don't know that, like, Justice is going to be good. I think they have some, like, real interesting names, but I don't know if I trust them too terribly high. I'm going to be real heretical. I don't even know if I trust Glads.
That's wild.
Is that crazy?
Yeah. Over this, I think, like...
It's not necessarily over Titans, but, like, with some of the shit that, like, is cooking around, I'm not about it. I don't think it's good. I don't care for it. I really don't. Yes, I agree. Like, Mayhem could, I think that's where it feels like to me for NA as it stands. Is like, I agree. I think New York and like Vegas are like kind of bottom. Like that's the stratification at the bottom. I think there's a big gray area, and then it's like Atlanta, Houston, Chalk. That's kind of where it sits, right? Like everybody else is just in this weird amalgamation in the middle that I feel like with what you're saying, there are going to be meta gambles that just hit and some that just fucking miss. Mm-hmm. And like there are going to be teams that just fucking bottom out.
Yeah.
I don't know where Titans end up, but I don't think that it's like fair to put them, or I wouldn't agree. Nix the fairness, but I don't agree that they're like in the bottom stratification of what I conceptualize the league to be at this current moment. I think this team needs some moves. I think they shouldn't be finished yet. But I like the start, and I think that this is like my too early to call like overperformer award. I think this is a team that definitely can overperform. We'll have to see with London because they could be.
I think they can overperform, but only because I think they're at bottom 3 in NA.
I'm not even going that angle. I think they could like genuinely do like a London run where they like end 6th of the league and like make playoffs where like they really shouldn't.
Right. Possible. Then you got to convince me that you can win from the culture angle and from the playing a bunch of like smart, like outside the norm, playing to your strength type of meta comps, like remain through like the trenches of having to scrim the shit teams in the league and like, you know, all that entire process, that tenacity that it requires in order to be London. Honestly, I'm not even trusting London to be London this year.
Agreed. Yeah, it's tough to like make that Cinderella story happen again. But at some point, I think we have to look at London as just being like a solid team and just being like good.
Sure. Like once again, it will depend. And I talked to Christopher. I had a text interview.
Yeah.
And I asked him, like, does he not feel any pressure based on that performance, right? Like, that was a ridiculous overperformance. Like, the likes we haven't seen since Boston Uprising. And Boston Uprising performed better. But in relation to the sophistication of the league, they had much more, you know, like, stuff to exploit in a honestly terrible scouting market where they were ahead of everyone else. Of course, also having the best coach of all time on their team at the time. So, and ask him, what are you scared? And like he said, like there's a possibility where we finish like 2-3 places under where we were, and we still consider that season successful. I think that's the right way to look at it. I think, once again, this roster with their resources and with their pound-for-pound players, once again, if they float above the bottom, that's realistically where I expect them to be. Everything else is an overperformance. And I'm not sure if one should be betting on that once again, especially with the heavy pressure that the market puts on them, right? Had they gotten, let's say a Dante for the off tanks for Hardy, or a Kai, right?
Sure.
Now we're cooking differently, right? That's a different quality of roster. Even though I would say Kai, Sparker, almost tomato.
In some ways, yeah.
In some ways, everything else, I'm skeptical. Like I think, he basically said like, I had to very early make the decision. Like it's not like he didn't realize the market situation, right? He was like, I gotta figure out if I want guys that can click heads very well, or do I want guys that feed into the culture thing that we've going on, and he decided for the latter. And once again, bold move. He has a lot of reasons to go with that decision. I'll be rooting for that. I'm not sure if I'm betting on it, because it feels like a lot came together and they were exploiting a fairly weak competition down there. That's probably because of the hyper concentration of competition. Once again, everything they did is absolutely marvelous, but there's 2 teams on the server when they play. And whenever a team lost to the London Spitfire in 2022, it was shameful on all the baseline arguments that you can bring in terms of roster.
I mean,
roster,
when you want to talk
pound,
about pound
spending.
for pound, you really shouldn't be losing to a team that like dwarfs you in budget and like pound for pound, like eye test strength. I agree. If you want to talk about betting, I have a potential Lord bet for you that I'm willing to accept right now. If you're so inclined to be froggy about the team in blue and green, okay? How do I word this? I think Titans make playoffs.
We can't do that right now because we don't know who qualifies for playoffs. Which
you got like a couple minutes offer.
You realize that the Overwatch League could just say participation awards, everyone gets to playoffs, and I lose a Lord bet based on that shit? Nah. At the same time, it could be like, oh yeah, we don't have the budget to fly everyone out. We have a 4-man playoff.
That's the gamble.
We're betting on the structure of the Overwatch League. That's a shit bet. No. I thought you would like just give me a spot. What a spot I can bet you on.
I'm gonna take the over 8th
in NA.
In NA, so
or globally.
Dallas, San Fran. No, it'd be in NA. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is London. I'm just looking at last year's like rankings in NA. As of week 24, it's Fuel, Shock, Glads, Outlaws, Rain, Spitfire, Mayhem, Defiant. I would say above. I'll spice it. I think above 7th. I think the Vancouver Titans finish above 8th.
So they have to be 7th?
Yes, 7th is the lowest I'll go. Lord bet.
Dude, there are a couple of complexities that
you
don't.
See what I'm saying?
No, the problem is there's a couple of complexities in there that has to be considered that you don't know about that makes it much more spicy of a take.
Oh, okay.
I just want to take a Lord bet that says the Titans will underperform, but
Yeah, but that's so nebulous.
7th is actually like it's possible. It's not impossible. I'm meta gambling here. Fuck it. Let's do it.
All right. So the Titans have to finish 7th or above, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
You're saying below 7th.
In NA.
Yes, strictly NA. End of season.
Right.
I think I see a world.
Regular standing or playoffs finishing? Regular season.
Oh, we'll say regular season standing. Yeah.
Right.
Playoffs are that's harder to call.
Right. With all the points and mumbo jumbo that comes with it. Yep. Right.
Yep.
All right. Yep.
All right.
Accept.
They could do a Florida Mayhem.
I feel like that's a 60-40, and we haven't done one in a minute, so
it really is a 60-40. And it would be Baroy's team, right? It wouldn't be Winston's lab without a good old 60-40 for the prediction models, right? Shout outs to the real one. Shout outs to Finzi, who apparently ruined the fucking market there. But as it stands, there is another team that has been doing some announcements, especially today as of recording this. The Vegas Eternal apparently are not staying the same. Anything there? Anything fun? No?
Dude, you gotta believe that Empress has magic. Working.
I think they will probably improve. I think that they everything that, like, speaking to Avala in the past, I think there is like some reason to believe that they do believe in the players. They have been improving. But and to be fair, Vulcan is an addition that I think is a good, but it's real hard to not just put them dead ass bottom of NA and just kind of just write them off. Like, it's real hard to not do that. And I don't even think the players are all that bad. Like, I thought Dove had like a solid season. I think there's more to see about Vulcan. I don't think that like he got a fair shake on New York, even though he really didn't get a shake.
I just hope they're good enough for Vulcan to get his revenge against NY.
Yes.
So that's all I want.
Agreed. Yeah, same. I think he that would be a great storyline that I hope the league like leans into. I don't know that they will, but we'll see. Yeah, I think there's a budding narrative that this is a season that I don't know that anybody's going to finish winless, and I don't know that it's going to be like,
very well might be. I trust NXL to be capable of that.
I mean, yeah, when they're throwing around some of these like meme-worthy like roster, if some of the shit that has been reported on actually hit their table and they're like, yeah, maybe this is a good idea. Like, yeah, competitive-wise, like, not cool. And there's so many other better ways to go about it. Go read the reports if you want to make your brain hurt. Yeah, it's possible, but it would. I'm so tired of seeing bye weeks in this league. And Vegas is like, it's close to not even being like, I don't even know if they are a bye week. I think they could probably sneak in a couple wins. Not against like the Shock, but
look, this is once again a roster that's going to be probably the most resource staffed.
Agreed. Yeah.
In NA, it's tough. It's fucking tough to play against these realities, right? So, honestly, like, you're probably at a point. Dude, I heard some of those collegiate contracts. I wouldn't take a fucking bottom tier NA. Like, monetarily, probably like the collegiate makes more sense for you based on what the scholarship
because they're just pissing money.
It's crazy. Right?
Yeah.
So like you're not sincerely in a situation where like the competition there, and for the future, like you gotta think a little bit ahead. Like like these bottom teams, like it's hard, right? So, yeah. But then again, I think there probably were existing Redbird player improvements in the market. Sure. I hope they contacted those guys because I think they would be instant upgrades. Like And there's also guys like King still there. There's Dynasty. There's Gig. You know, like we talked about with the NA guys. Like, I think those are just straight up upgrades.
No, I agree. And I think the reason why you don't see them is because they probably, a lot of those names probably already have offers on better teams.
I mean,
right?
possible. Like, yes, possible.
You know what I mean? And it's tough to just want to go to Paris, who, like you said, has no money. You know, probably is sticking with the same team. Like, spoke with, you know, the coaching staff last season or at the end of this season, and they're like, yeah, we're probably going to stick with most of the same players. It's like, I mean, I like the guys, but like, do I want to play with them? Like, probably not when I can go play with like X solid playoff team. Like, seems pretty cut and dry to me. Like, yeah, contact them 100%, but like, are you really going to have any kind of like swaying power? Probably not.
Yeah, whatever team is going to play against them other than NYXL, they can only lose, right? Like,
yeah, it's tough to bet for them. It's tough, but I do want to give Empress credit. I think that she's done nothing but really good things and has busted her ass. So I've heard.
I mean, that's just setting the expectations. So when she does overperform with her team, that we can accurately reward that, as we did with London, right?
Yep. Agreed. Same thing, I think, with like the careful expectation setting with like Glads, with like Face, where it's just like in reverse, where it's like, no, guys, Face has been here forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this isn't crazy that this team's like doing well. Like, he's a good coach.
Yes,
it's not surprising.
And he also has prize players.
True. Yeah. Solid. I mean, I think our early season estimations ended up kind of paying off, but regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody else? I know that Glads have signed Lengsa, going through some individual kind of rapid fires here. It's good. I like Lengsa. It would have been a write-in for me.
Lastro.
I'm sorry, not Lengsa. Yes.
Oh yeah,
Lastro
the ICIs. We're back.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that like that's a solid pickup. Mm-hmm. I think I was very surprised with Lastro last season, but like, are we really gonna argue that that's like a upgrade?
No, that's a straight downgrade, right? Like, can we just call a spade a spade? It's fucking shoe, dude. Like, that's probably the best main support of the last. Sorry, if Flex. Can you say that? Yeah, of the last 2 years, I would say.
Yeah,
I think he has.
And I think
Violet Beat.
Like,
I think he has.
Yeah.
He has.
I think you could argue like he's a top 5 like Flex, even outside of like joining the Overwatch League. Mm-hmm. Like, you could make that argument, and I'd be here for it.
I mean, the longevity is crazy. Yeah.
The kid's a fucking absolute nut, and like Lastro's not bad, but he also just got off playing main support or at least a handful of both main and flex support characters.
Yes.
From this season, and it's not bad, but like you said, spade a spade. It's not shoe.
Yes.
It ain't shoe.
Yeah.
And I hope that's not an omen.
For because the other signings, the quality of those.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of like I like the energy that you're giving Titans. I like the energy that you're looking at Boston with, where it's just like, all right, there's some like S tier players here that like nobody's signing. So like, who wants to like buck up and like sign the Choi's, sign the Alpha Yees? You know, where's profit going? Mm-hmm. Like, if Glads don't get away with something like that,
yeah,
and I got some issues.
I'll tell you right now, I have some idea what they're signing. I feel like I don't know what's going on, and I've been told some wrong stuff because of the stuff I know. I can't make any sense of that.
Right.
Like, that just doesn't coherently come together in my mind as a vision of a team. That makes much sense. So I just assume I'm missing heavy pieces, right? In terms of like who else they signed, or maybe I got someone wrong, or like that type of stuff.
Is there a world where like budget has been like tapered back a little bit, and that's why the decisions they're making are kind of odd.
Yeah,
at least like from the rumor mill.
Like there are teams that seem to just like be oddly removed from the esports business, and they just chalk it up and just say, okay, like here, that's what we expect. Do whatever you want, and they don't ask too many questions because they're just too far removed from the core business, right?
Yeah.
And then Guard seems to be a little bit more on the ball, and I remember like that there were some critical comments from like towards the situation in the Overwatch League. So it's not impossible that, once again, like with the quality of the players that are currently out there, it's totally possible that Glads could be cooking up the best team. They still have fucking Kevster. That's a solid ass fucking base.
Yeah, that's nobody's gonna fucking argue that. Like,
if Lastro is really just your backup flex DPS, I have less of an issue with that. If he's your scoot.
Support rather, right?
Yeah. Sorry, support. Yeah. There are, once again, a couple of bangers. Like, where's Profit going? We're not 100% sure that Hanbin is staying with the fuel. Like,
Agreed.
Kai is somewhere. Like, is that flex support? That's Twilight, Shio.
Sure. Granted, I think, did we not hear recently that like there was some like loose rumors to like point to where maybe Twilight could be going?
Yeah, the Philly connection has been made. Well, once again, I'm just saying, like, these guys are theoretically still in the ether for them to attract. So there's potential to still form like a banger team. It just feels like they must have then missed on a bunch. Like Smurf is gone, Fearless is gone.
Sure.
And they don't get Reiner back. I'm not sure what the space situation is. If you miss on Hanbin, really like that, you're now like Callan. Yeah. What is happening to Callan? Is that a guy that people still seriously consider, or is he just going to be away? There's other like evergreen.
I'm gonna be real with you. I don't even mind a Kelton pick, but I think that says where Glads are in like the roster market,
right?
And it's not a bad thing, but it's not where you'd expect, right? I think that's safe to say. Like, I think Kellen has some in the tank. I don't think NYXL is like the end all be all. That season was cooked for them after they, after Libero fucking ran the FTX, train on them, right? Like, it is what it is. But if we wake up Christmas morning and the Glads open up a Kellen versus a Hanbin, I think those are two different vibes. Neither are bad, but like should speak volumes to like where they sit, right?
Right. Like, okay, let me run this. I think the top 3 flex DPS. Do you need a flex DPS? I think Kevster can probably play whatever, right? So if you want a flex DPS, what you want? Choice 1, Alpha Yi, Profit, Yaki, or Sparkle.
If we're looking at like, are you asking like dedicated flex DPS? Like, I don't really need to be. Unironically, I think I probably lead with Alpha Yi, probably Profit, then Sparkle, something like that. Those would be like the top 3 for me. And that's like mostly barring Tracer, but even then it still kind of like works out. If it's including Tracer, then I probably lead with Profit, and then I probably swap Profit and Alpha E for me. But like, yeah, that would be like, who would I expect Gladiators to sign? You know what I mean? Like, that's who I'm looking at as to like, like this is the talent that is going to pair with Kevster. Maybe even a third that like is a role player. Like, you need a Happy or like who's in the market for dedicated hit scan. Sure, like a Kai type of player. It doesn't have to be Kai, but like that type of player, right? Like you want to give Kilo a second chance, I guess, but even then,
Fitz is still there.
I'm kind of. I think Fitz had a great playoffs, but did he have a good playoffs? I don't remember. I remember like flip flopping around with him. I feel like going into playoffs, it was like kind of mid, and then he kind of hit. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, that would be who I'd really like to see play for Glads. Again, you want to talk about like Christmas motif, you know, if I'm Glads on Christmas Day and I open up a, you know, somebody who isn't named Alpha Year Prophet, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. Or if I'm opening up a Piggy, if Piggy's under my tree, my big ass purple tree, I don't know if I'm super jazzed, right? Like that type of player where it's like a hotba, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
man, it's not bad, but like that really says where we're at.
Are there more players that are salvageable from the Spark, maybe, that I'm forgetting? Other than Alpha Yi?
I mean, there's still Bernard, that's fine.
There's also theoretically, like in contenders, there's Top Dragon, right? Like this.
Yeah, I think that's like I think that's a solid move. I think that probably deserves to be on that list. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna have to double check this, but sorry for the keyboard. I always forget if he's a flex DPS. Okay, I don't know why I always like worry about him being a hit scan, but like he probably deserves to be on that like flex DPS list. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be mad at that if I like open up my presence under the tree and a Top Dragon's there. Like, yeah, that's solid. I like that. Like, again, rookie talent mixed with veteran talent seems to be, at least in my mind, like the formula for success moving forward. But it remains to be seen. Again, Lastro's not bad, but I don't know if maybe I'm reading too much into it to worry, or to at least hedge my bets a little bit. That maybe Glads, we'll see. I don't know if they're a lock for playoffs.
Sure.
But is there anybody else we're forgetting? Anybody else? Obviously, we had the Dallas departures that everybody kind of expected. We've already talked about Fearless to Houston. Atlanta obviously signing, as you reported. The former Dallas Fuel backline only, solidifies them as a very, very strong and potent team that will lose to another team. No, I shouldn't believe you. You're sick. But I think that's kind of it for roster moves and signings. I know that we've kind of been going deep in the pocket, but
sure.
Is there anything else left in the tank that you're interested in exploring?
I think there is one thing that could happen this offseason that lets me join your AT train.
Okay.
I'll see if that works out, and if it does, then
is that an AT boon or a Atlanta debuff?
No, like I don't like the relative comparison is not that interesting to me. More so that AT can escape the mid tier.
Gotcha.
You would say that the Defiance would be a better team than Vancouver, right? So that's not a team that is presumably
should be. Yeah, should be.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Will they? We'll have to see.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what that team looks like.
Lord Yiska has a nice ring to it.
I think I have a great line that echoes a lot of Chengdu Bobbery. So we'll have to see.
We'll see.
Well, I mean, to be fair to the old heads that even remember that, like that came down to like their final match, right? Like Chengdu easily could have not made that, and I look like an absolute dipshit. Close, but close doesn't matter.
History doesn't matter.
We will see. Exactly. We will see. But with the holidays wrapping up, we will be continuing Contenders Week. I'm going to make that known now and hopefully on socials relatively soon that Contenders Week is continuing, but there was some roster movements, and I know that that's like a hot button issue that we wanted to get out there. I think we have this locked in, so I'll just talk about it here and announce it. that for next week's episode, we will be joined by both Dor and Moxie to cover Contenders Europe, talk about the graduating class there. That'll be awesome. That'll be our first show of 2023. But 276 pretty much is a wrap. And I guess this also kind of wraps 2022 for us, right?
Crazy.
Another year in the books.
Mm-hmm. Pretty good.
You're stuck with me.
Competition-wise. Like, I think I enjoyed this year a lot in terms of the sheer competition. I like the format. Of course, like that Overwatch 2 came in. I think I like Overwatch 2 as a game more. At least to play it as an esport, I'm reserving judgment a little bit longer. I fucking love that we don't have hero pools. I still disagree with some of the competitive rulings. Of course, it's always going to be a thing when you're so intensely German that you want to, have your grass cut exactly 6 millimeters off the ground. But yeah, overall, decent year. Unfortunately, has not provided the amount of answers that I had hoped it would for Overwatch esports. We gotta stay vigilant, I guess, into 2023, and should be good.
Yeah, we'll echo a lot of the same points. If anything, I'm slightly more bullish. I think we operate on two sides of like a very like minor coin, where it's like I don't know. Maybe you could disagree with me if I'm speaking out of school here, but I think you're a little bit more pessimistic on the game, and I think I'm a little bit more bullish. Is that fair to say? Or the esports side, rather?
Yep. Could probably be.
I think for me, at least, the Shock and Fuel show match, that at least like having a sponsor and not just being completely funded by, the two teams, I think that's like a great sign for the future. Especially when we're talking about like how dark it is with, a potential, I don't even know. I'm not keeping up with economics, but we might even just be in a recession at this point. I wouldn't know. Sure. And with, cutbacks in that way, and esports media is still kind of figuring itself out, and sponsors, still not, talk about the crypto crash and all this other garbage. Like, yeah, finances are tight. And to still find a way to try to sell a product and it being, a sizable success. You have still Wolf and Achilleos coming out, casting things, super cool. Using it as a platform to announce rosters, that's super cool. I think that should be a lifeline that I think people can latch onto. But agreed, a lot of the points that you said there. Overwatch 2, super fun. I'm even playing it a little bit. And yeah, wow. It's been a fun year. Overwatch 2 is definitely a life jacket out here. We'll have to see what the new year brings. Maybe even some new heroes. That's kind of what I'm banking on.
I'm wishing for some licensing in China.
Yes, I mean that would be the ultimate holiday gift. Is figuring that whole mess out, because that sorts out a lot of issues, right?
Yes,
a lot of problems go away if that gets somehow fixed, which, from my understanding, is pretty hard to get fixed. So,
yeah.
Hopefully there's some movement there. But that's it for us. 276. Happy holidays. Love you guys. Join the Discord. Download the podcast. Like and subscribe. All that garbage. We'll see you in 277. Adios.
Peace.